So in case you have been out of the loop, Assassin's Creed Shadows, which is Ubisoft's next big title that absolutely has to succeed in order for Ubisoft to survive, is in flames, as well as Ubisoft, and this has been the case for quite some time, with the Japanese people pushing back against this video game that can't seem to get anything right historically when it comes to Japanese culture. And now it has gotten so bad for Ubisoft that they have now begun to apologize from several different angles to the Japanese people, who are now doubling down on their pushback of this video game by creating a petition calling for the cancellation of Assassin's Creed Shadows based on the fact that Ubisoft cannot seem to get historical accuracy correct. Now here is what's really interesting. The day before this petition was created, it was reported that Assassin's Creed Shadows was stealing banner symbols from the Sekigahara Teppo core. So I'm sure that I pronounced that wrong, but they are a core in Japan that has their own specific banner, and Ubisoft apparently stole that banner. As Grum says here, the comment section is filled with displeasure about Ubisoft first claiming that the game was historical, then flipping to fiction when called out. Yasuke goes around decapitating and crushing the heads of all the peasants and characters that appear in the game. Member of Sekigahara Rifle Corps may be treated in the same way by Yasuke in the game. So who found the symbols that Ubisoft was apparently stealing? Well, it was a Japanese YouTuber. This is the YouTuber right here, and they made a video showing in their footage what was being stolen, showing the flags up close. And yes, that is apparently what happened. If you look right here, this is the Sekigahara core group right here, and this is a picture of them with their banner. And if you see it right there, that is the exact same one that you see in this game image right here. Do you see that? Ubisoft said that they hired experts to help them understand the culture and to get it right for their video games. So why are they just picking random banners from corporations that they don't even understand, a rifle corps, and using that? Okay, so that was one of the issues that people found. And so they started to do a little bit more digging and ended up finding a bunch more. And now we have a petition that has been translated from Japanese to English on this page so that you guys can see what it says. Calls for the cancellation of Assassin's Creed Shadows. This petition has reached nearly 75,000 signatures since it was created on June 19th, the day after it was reported that there was thievery afoot, and it is hitting astronomical numbers. Just today, 3,200 people, probably more since I refreshed this page, have signed this petition. And what it says here is, recently the lack of historical accuracy and cultural respect for Assassin's Creed Shadows, which is scheduled to be released by game developer Ubisoft, has become a serious problem. The game is about samurai in Japan and ignores the fact that samurai are the upper class of the samurai class and should be gokujin, I probably pronounced that wrong too, or nobles who serve them. In fact, William Adams, the first European to receive the title of samurai, was a man in the service of Tokugawa Ieyasu as the bannerman of the 250 koku. In this history, Ubisoft continues to misunderstand the nature and role of the samurai. This is a serious insult to Japan's culture and history and can also lead to Asian racism. We call on Ubisoft to immediately cease the release of Assassin's Creed Shadows and to show sincere research and respect for Japan's history and culture. We need your signature. Sign this petition to convey the importance of cultural respect and historical accuracy to Ubisoft. Now, do I believe that Ubisoft is going to stop the development of this game because of the petition right here reaching almost 75,000 signatures? Probably not. I mean, the game is reported to have plenty of pre-order activity, and Ubisoft is a big game developer. It's going to be hard to take them down with 100,000 signatures or even more than that on a petition. But what this does provide people with is legitimate insight into what the Japanese culture thinks about this game. Japanese gamers are pushing back against this game. On YouTube videos that criticize this game, there are plenty of people who are in agreement with the historical inaccuracies of Assassin's Creed Shadows, especially when it comes to Yasuke, who is reported by Wikipedia itself and Google to be a samurai, even though it was recent that he was actually a retainer. That's what these websites reflected. But ever since Assassin's Creed Shadows became the center of everybody's focus, actual historical websites are changing their tune to match what Ubisoft is trying to say about Yasuke, because people cannot apparently stand the fact that Yasuke was not a samurai. But I don't think that it was possible he was an actual samurai. I still think that he was either a servant or a retainer who was just given a bunch of privileges in the limited amount of time that he was with Nobunaga. Okay, because it says right here, right above my head, that he was only in service to Nobunaga for 15 months. And overall, his time in Japan was about 2 to 3 years, give or take. Now, unless he was learning the Japanese language prior to traveling traveling with the Jesuits to Japan to preach Christianity to the Japanese people, then it's going to be very hard for him to learn Japanese and become a samurai in just the span of 3 years' time. It does say historically that Yasuke did know a little bit of Japanese and he entertained Nobunaga in their conversations. What I am reading is that he was given a house and a stipend just like a samurai was, but again, he was only in service to Nobunaga for 15 months, so the amount of knowledge that he would have to have both in the Japanese language and in the samurai teachings, he would have to be doing this for years in order to be able to master it, to be able to become some kind of legendary samurai. Let's not forget that by the end of his service to Nobunaga, he ended up surrendering his sword, giving up and being sent away back to the Jesuits in India. I know this because on the Wikipedia page itself, they're forced to admit, despite the fact that they're trying to convince everybody through gaslighting that Yasuke was always a samurai and that he was just a legendary warrior, they're forced to admit that Yasuke surrendered his sword when a vassal of Akechi approached him and said, "Do not be afraid, give me that sword." Now, do you think a samurai would give someone his sword just like that, just because they said, "Don't be scared"? The guy obviously probably looked scared, but Yasuke just gave his sword up. He didn't commit seppuku, he didn't follow samurai tradition, he gave his sword up and he was sent back to the Jesuits. End of story. But go ahead and believe that in a 3-year period of time, he was able to master the Japanese language and become a samurai and do legendary things? I think not. And this, among other things, is why Ubisoft Japan is now issuing an apology, among other parts of Ubisoft apologizing on different fronts about their historical mess-ups with Assassin's Creed Shadows. It says right here, translated from Japanese, "We have received notice that 2 pieces of concept art previously released for Assassin's Creed Shadows use the flag of the Sekigahara Battlefield Hospitality Union Rifle Corps without permission. The group was given the opportunity to apologize and it was accepted." Okay, so they said sorry, the group accepted. The art in question will not be used or distributed any further beyond this date, except for being included in the art book in the collector's edition. I really don't know why they would keep that in the collector's edition. I feel like that should be removed too, but that is what they're going with, and apparently the apology was accepted. And they go on to say, "We deeply apologize for this matter because it was a huge mistake for them to make and very disrespectful." Absolutely. So yeah, Ubisoft Japan itself, all right, they're having to apologize for this because it was such a huge mistake. And this is not the only mistake that they have made as of late. They can't even get their collector's editions right. Assassin's Creed Shadows Collector's Edition merchandise criticized for historical and linguistic errors. So on the collector's edition, you get a nice little Yasuke statue, but on his banner, it shows a different house that he is committed to rather than the Nobunaga house on his armor itself. So this is probably a small problem, but the fact that it is in a collector's item speaks volumes. These people just can't get it right. They hired all these experts for no reason. They can't even get their symbols right. These 2 symbols right here apparently mean 2 different things, 2 different houses of samurai, and that is what is being displayed on his armor because they don't pay attention to these things. These puzzle boxes right here being sent out to people don't even have the Japanese language written correctly on it, and it's being criticized for all of its linguistic mistakes. How do you get the Japanese language incorrect? You have Japanese experts helping you develop this game and create these items for people. How are you messing up this bad? It says Yasuke's name is written on the collector's edition box. However, looking at it closely, people have pointed out that the second kanji character seems to be written as 2 separate kanji characters. This changes the meaning and reading completely. And this, by the way, is if you do not count the fact that they've messed up the concept of torii gates as well, since torii gates are symbolic and spiritual gateways for shrines that are nearby, and you're not even supposed to walk through them through the center. You're supposed to walk off over on the side when entering through, while also bowing and following Japanese tradition so that you don't trample all over holy ground like Yasuke did when he rode through on a horse right through a torii gate and made mention about how the Japanese people are going to have to work hard and growing rice. So yeah, a lot of problems with this game, and that is why, following historical error complaints, Assassin's Creed Shadows director promises the trailer's architectural inaccuracies will be ironed out for the RPG's launch. And there are other problems that they point out. People can't stop finding these issues because once you find a big issue like Yasuke in a game like Assassin's Assassin's Creed Shadows, which is supposed to be set in Japan, they're going to start pointing out all of the other flaws this game has too. Like the trailer's square-shaped tatami mats that would traditionally have a rectangular shape in the scene where Warlord Oda Nobunaga meets with his entourage. Now they say Assassin's Creed is of course a fictional series featuring mythical beasts and ancient aliens, but it's normally renowned for its attention to historical details. So anybody making that argument is like, well, there's a bunch of fictional stuff in it, yes, but what Ubisoft's games are praised for is their historical accuracy in those games. After all, Assassin's Creed Unity's rendition of the Notre Dame helped rebuild the actual cathedral after a fire set out in 2019, and look no further than Assassin's Creed Mirage's 9th century Baghdad, a city so faithfully recreated it made a historian cry. But now they're making the Japanese people cry, and the only historians that are crying are the ones that see that Japanese culture is being ripped apart by a bunch of Europeans working at Ubisoft. And I'm sorry, but there are apparently not enough experts in the world to help you achieve historical accuracy, despite the fact that you say we have been working with experts in Japan from day one of development. Well, an argument would be able to be made for that if your experts weren't just a bunch of LGBTQ plus activists who want to challenge moral standards around transgenerational sex. And this expert, who they hired as a consultant, has been teaching them about gay love between men and underage boys, or just underage boys with underage boys. And these are the people that they are hiring to develop the video game Assassin's Creed Shadows. Now, do not forget that Ubisoft has worked with Sweet Baby Inc. in the past for Assassin's Creed Valhalla, so they are well versed in the consultancy agency game, and I don't see that they are going to stop anytime soon. With experts like these and historical inaccuracies like the aforementioned, Ubisoft has a huge disaster on their hands, and again, it has to succeed. I doubt that they're going to stop development of this game. They're probably going to push it out because they have way too many people that have pre-ordered, but I do feel that gamers who have pre-ordered this game are in for disappointment, especially the ones who pre-ordered before seeing gameplay. That was hilarious to see, especially considering that they are tripling down on all of their DEI efforts and have been since March. They do not care about the backlash, and they said that they are firm believers of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they will push that out as hard as they can, regardless of what gamers say. It says right here that they're proud to represent diversity and inclusion that exists in society as part of their everyday work. Representation is part of their very own DNA, so don't expect them to stop, but do expect that the media will defend them day in and day out. Even after this game releases, you can expect a plethora of articles attacking gamers for disliking the direction that this game has taken, especially when it comes to the Japanese people who the media are apparently against. Anybody in the West who reports on video games, there is a chance that they are not telling the full truth about what is happening with this video game. Unfortunately for them, the anti-gamer narrative can only survive in the West, because when that narrative rears its ugly head across the sea, it spells doom for the people who try to push it, because now we have Kotaku's Australia branch shutting down. And this is the other really interesting story that I wanted to share with you all, because the argument that I'm seeing right off the bat, fresh off the heels of this report, that this does not affect Kotaku in the United States, but it actually does, and it affects them greatly, and I'll explain exactly why. It says Kotaku Australia to shut down, license holder Pedestrian Group to refocus on own brands, also drops Vice and Gizmodo in the country, dozens laid off. Kotaku Australia will be shutting down as license holder Pedestrian Group has restructured. So as reported by The Guardian, several titles from the company's portfolio of licensed publications will cease to exist in the country, also including Vice, Gizmodo, and Lifehacker. There is a lot to unpack here. Now, Grums does provide some insight from The Guardian that I'm going to point out because he highlighted some very important parts of the article. Kotaku Refinery 29 to no longer publish in Australia after Pedestrian Group announces restructure. The CEO of Pedestrian said that he blames the licensed partners facing financial headwinds and corporate instability, as well as a decline in the broader advertising market and the growth of TikTok and Instagram as part of the decision. There's probably a lot of reasons why Kotaku Australia is shutting down. The aftermath of them shutting down is what I'm interested in, but I also think that it's important to point out that Kotaku is one of, if not the worst gaming journalism outlet in the United States, since most of their articles are filled with hatred towards gamers, whites, and males, and all sorts of racist, bigoted, and misogynistic things being said in those articles towards innocent people all the time. I just don't care if Kotaku's Australia branch shuts down. Now, the media is really sorry about this. They're sad that this is happening. Of course. They're like, oh, this is such a sad day. I do feel for the people that are actually trying to do real journalism journalism at a Kotaku branch in Australia, and I hope that they do find jobs, but Kotaku has done terrible things with its reporting, and they have been less than honest on most of the things that they have reported on. Some of their employees have gone absolutely nuts in attacking innocent people on social media with little to no repercussions. So there are many reasons, of course, that this branch could have shut down, and the CEO can blame TikTok if he wants to, but there are probably a lot of reasons that aren't being spoken about. These people are like, oh, this is so sad, you know, Kotaku's been around forever. Yeah, but their ethics are completely out of whack. Their morality is completely out of whack. They need a serious reform, if not a complete restructure. In fact, sometimes it's good for these news outlets to shut down and let another phoenix rise from the ashes that actually knows what they're doing and will report honestly on things and actually talk about video games like they know what they're talking about. But how does this affect Kotaku in the West? Well, it says right here from Grumps, Kotaku AU closing may nuke much of the main website. Kotaku may lose most of their archived content and tons of images as recent as 2019 due to closing in Australia. Former Kotaku reporter Luke Plunkett reveals that Kotaku AU was the only place where older articles were stored and, for some reason, many images. And he says right here that if there's anyone who used to work at Kotaku Australia who I haven't reached out to today but would like to say a word or two about the site for something, please DM me or email me. He says extra super effed up thing about Kotaku AU closing is that it threatens the archives for the main site too. Most pre-2009-ish Kotaku blogs were lost years ago and only preserved on Kotaku Australia. So most of their important information is in Australia, the branch that is shutting down. Geo in their infernal ineptitude blocked almost every image ever posted on the main site from before 2019, but lots lived on in Kotaku Australia servers, or did, and now they're not going to anymore unless they back them up and send them stateside. Maybe they could, but this does affect Kotaku in the West, and this should be an indication of where Kotaku is headed. It seems like they're headed down the toilet. Ever since Alyssa Mercanti started spewing a whole bunch of nonsense to people, it seems that Kotaku has been slowly spiraling into chaos. It's no surprise that she is reacting just as irrationally as a bunch of other people are. She says you have no idea what journalism is, but apparently she does. Your websites look like they're from 2001. They're riddled with typos. You use yourselves as a source of stories. You have an internet connection and a webcam and think you have something worthy to say. We could set my Nana up with a Razer Keo in her care home and she'd make more coherent S. She's definitely not talking about herself, by the way, and she goes on to say it's a shame that private equity and Google have gutted legacy media sites and the stupidest, cruelest people in the world are rushing to fill in the gaps. Oh, the irony! There are only one group of people that have acted completely insane in all of these controversial situations, and it is mostly coming from game developers who have lost their minds and most definitely reporters who are actually bloggers in disguise. Now, what do these two stories have in common besides the fact that they are both defenders of Sweet Baby Inc? Well, whatever you call this abomination of an ideology that is being pushed from the United States into other countries, it is poisonous, and the people in these countries that see the US trying to do this are not okay with it and they're pushing back. Now, the Japanese are pushing back and trying to get a video game canceled because this video game is just full of historical inaccuracies that insult the Japanese culture. The fact that they're pushing DEI so hard raises a bunch of other red flags that people are now looking out for, especially the Japanese. So they're pushing back on this. And then you have the Kotaku branch in Australia closing because Pedestrian Group are restructuring. Gaming journalism is dying, and it's dying mostly because gaming journalism cannot be trusted anymore. It's not reliable, and now people are not tuning into it as much as they used to. And now these branches are closing down. TikTok and YouTube are becoming much more reliable in reporting on actual news. And since journalists defend consultancy agencies like Sweet Baby Inc., they continue to push lies and they try to gaslight people into believing history that's not actually there. This should show you that outside of the United States, people actually have common sense and they're cutting their losses while they still have a chance. And that is all I've got for you guys in this video today. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you haven't had the chance to like it and share it with your friends, that would be awesome. And hey, if you're feeling ultra spicy, consider subscribing to my channel so that you're always up to date on what kind of thing I've got going on. I look forward to seeing you all in the next one. Later. Meow meow.